the first time you did Sean Bean, did you go, oh, well, this one, I'm going to do this one for a while?
It was very successful very, very quickly. But often when you do, like if you do an original character, then you've got to create that character and who they are, what they think, the world they operate in, for the audience, through writing. If you're playing a named character, Sean Bean, Daniel Day-Lewis, I did Pierce Brosnan as a centaur one year.
Yes, I wish I'd seen that. It sounds fantastic.
Then you've given the audience a head start. So like they know, so there's a different freedom that comes with writing gags about a name of a character that the audience immediately know ahead of time. And then you're just playing on what they already know, and different things like that. So there is a different type of joy in writing, let's say, an unoriginal character as opposed to an original character. There's a different type of joy and freedom that comes with that. I first did him as on a radio show that I had for Radio 4. And I first did him as an improvisation for a Saturday Night Live audition tape. Yeah, which a dreadful tape, dreadful. A total failure. The only good thing to come out of it was a very good thing. I found I could just drip into that. He's got a different performance energy than a lot of the characters that I've played. He's more withdrawn. He's more, because of that gap between the audience's previous knowledge of the real Sean Bean, I can afford to take a step back and let them come to me, as opposed to if I'm creating Mastermind. Well, if they don't know the board game, the gap is for me to cover. You know what I mean? Like it's that.
Yeah.
I've got to fill that in, and then we can meet. But with Sean Bean, they're coming at me like they're like, go on. So I found that I could improvise as him very, very easily, because he was, the watchwords just to keep in my head were just, he's vague, he's medieval, and he never understands any medium he's in. Never understands it. So just always make him slightly vague and confused, but incredibly confident because of that. He's incredibly confident with everything. So, immediately, like it was a voice that I hadn't done before, an energy behind a voice and an intention behind a character that I hadn't done before, I don't think. And also like just an endless inspiration of one-liners and that you could mine, and honing in on the medieval aspect of him, which of course, like, he is far from known of just that, like, he's done so much stuff. So it was immediately, like I say, like the order is me, then the material, then the audience. Like, I knew straight away. I was like, oh yeah, I feel good doing this as a character. I made a decision very, very quickly on that 2014 show that the last time they'd seen me, I think I did Daniel Day-Lewis on stage. So the next time they were going to see me I was going to do another character, and I was going to start the show with someone who they already knew.
Okay.
So that, because I knew on that show, like I say, I was going to get 50% of audiences that had heard that I was a successful act who'd never seen me, and 50% of audiences that had seen me and followed me maybe all the way through meeting. So the perfect meeting point for those two audience brains in a big room was to give them a character that they knew that they hadn't seen before. And so that very much helped. And I did a big set piece. That was where the playing of people's hair came around, and I would be full suit of armor. And the design of that one man show was to get naked. So I'd start the show as Sean Bean in full armor, in full Game of Thrones furs. And then throughout the show, as I would play different characters, I'd get more and more undressed. And then the last sketch was me as the Victor character, who can be quite similar to Sean Bean in a lot of ways. Having a shower on stage with me just wearing a towel, and them getting in the shower with me in waterproofs and rubbing Radox at me. But he was such a standout hit from that show that it was just like, like could I write endless stuff with this guy? Maybe not, but is he going to be? And I certainly wasn't thinking of Cats Does Countdown or any of that stuff. But as as a fast track for the audience to just start laughing quickly, he was great. So yeah, he was an instant hit. And I think was he in any other shows? I'm not sure. I can't remember if I did him live other than just that one show. I can't, it doesn't, yeah, it's not in my head. But when the Dungeons and Bastards thing came along, so that was 2022, I think. And so I'd done the show in 2019, which was the big murder mystery show.
Yeah.
And that was a very difficult personal year for me. And I came off stage, and it was, like I said, the show went brilliantly well, but my heart had gone out of everything. And I knew that I wanted to try and write something different. And so I did. And then the pandemic happened, and I was writing something in there. But obviously, like, a consequence of pandemic was how it affected the live environment. And obviously, within the live environment, if you're a comedian whose USP is audience participation, proximity on stage, people, a very different time emerged in 2022, say, than there was that I left in 2019. And obviously, I'd changed the way that I was thinking about participation. But a number of factors had kind of come into my life and in my career where I knew that, like, at some point I'd need to get back on the horse and do some live work. And so the show that I really wanted to write was the Jimmy Connors play. And I couldn't get anyone to make that with me. And that was a play, that wasn't a comedy show, but it felt like the right show for me to make at that time. And I couldn't get any support going, but I don't have an agent, and I wanted to get an agent. And I was like, well, I need to go back to Edinburgh. And Edinburgh, I think in 2022 was the first one maybe where it felt like an Edinburgh of old, like all the venues were running, all the acts were going. And so I had two other shows that I possibly could do. One was a multi-character show that I really didn't want to do because it felt like a backward step.
Okay.
And one was like an absolute, just like cut loose late night party show almost with Sean Bean. And because I really wanted to do the play, and it couldn't happen, and I ended up going to Edinburgh with those two shows. Both of them somewhat became the Ugly Sister. They were shows that I didn't really care about, and I didn't really think too much about because I was so far from wanting to do that. And the show that I really wanted to do and fall in love with for a month, I couldn't do. And I felt all kinds of resentment and frustration about that. That for the first time coming back was the first time where I felt where I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I felt handcuffed, and I felt forgotten, and I felt isolated and frustrated. Now, as it turns out, I decided to do that multi-character show in the cafe at the Underbelly. And I deliberately did it as almost kind of like a work in progress type show, but I didn't bill it as such. But it was very, very stripped back. It was no lights. It's in a cafe. It's in an afternoon slot. They shut it down. I just do my stuff and then come out. It did brilliantly well. It sold out the entire run, albeit in a small cafe. It got great reviews, but I was like a husk performing it. I just couldn't connect with it. And it just felt like I was doing a tribute show to myself. Some really lovely stuff in there, really lovely lines, really lovely characters, but it didn't matter because my heart had gone out. You wouldn't know it maybe to watch it, certainly from the performance, because you got 110% of me as always. I couldn't cheat the audience in that regard, but I just felt hollow. And in that same month, 2 weeks into the festival was when I started Dungeons and Bastards. And I think I remember because I came from the back of the room in that room. And I think you must have come on the opening night because I remember walking past you on the high stool. Were you on the high stools at the back?
I was, yeah.
And I didn't know what that was going to be. And I was just like, oh, I've got to do this. I've now at the point where I feel the less like me, I've now got to be the most me. Yes. A late night, with this guy, I've got to deliver. And from minute one, your experience of that, watching that show was my experience of doing it. Again, no previews, no rehearsals, no tests or anything like that. I got out there and immediately that room like just set fire to itself, and it carried me, and I needed that show. And through the course of that I only did it for like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, but I knew that I'd found something there which was going to be very, very cathartic and useful for me as I was taking these steps towards creating a different vein of work with more theatrical play, straighter stuff. Is that as much as I would always say that I was an actor who worked in comedy, throughout the years, I had become a comedian, and I'd become a comedian that loved the juice of what that environment could give. And when I was in that room and that room went nuts for Sean and the audience, the audience created the show that they wanted me to give. And I couldn't have been more vulnerable to give them everything that they wanted. And suddenly maybe a lot of this stuff that I've been speaking about before, about the audience were the last people, to matter. I think in that show, they were the first, because I like I say, I was quite broken about a lot of things. And I have and still am quite broken about a lot of things to do with the industry and different aspects of it. Very, very brokenhearted about the realities of what it's like to work in this world, as opposed to what I hoped it would be like to work in this world. That show reminded me of everything that got me doing this in the first place. And I just knew that, like, whatever I do, and that's why, I've created a Christmas tour of it now that like, I know that whatever I do, I need that. I need to go in a room for an hour as him, and I need to just cut loose. And he can have every idea that got red penned from previous shows because they were too silly or too ridiculous. Because the audiences that love that character really love me doing that character. Yeah. They really love it. And there's something very nice, I think, for me at a different stage of my career, where I realize now that, like, the audience can guide me on this one, that I will create the popcorn movie for them. Like, they might have to sit through me doing a Jimmy Connors, our bass player wrote this indulgent kind of jazz odyssey. They might have to write through that. And Coach is a similar thing in that, it's important to me to tell a story, and then we'll get to the fun of it. But with that, it's just, it's fun. It's fun.
As an audience member, I was just like, I love everything about this from the gut. Like, absolutely, just put this in my face. I just loved it. I'm thrilled that you're doing the tour. You're coming. We'll talk. Well, I'll promo the tour with the episode, but I know you're coming to Bristol, and I've basically got a pencil for a gig. And if I'm not at my gig, I'm bringing all my friends coming to see Sean Bean.